You are in the trenches with Dave Lapham. This is Dave Burke. We're with Dave Lapham following the Bengals. A crazy roller coaster 23-20 loss in the season opener to the rival Pittsburgh Steelers. And Dave, was it rust? Was it the fact that the starters really didn't do anything in the preseason? This is a game that, as we talked about before we started doing this recording, that you could have won, you should have won, you should have lost, and you may look back at the end of the season and say, that game mattered a lot.
Oh, yeah, this game mattered a lot. There's no doubt about it. And it just tells you the power of turnovers. They went -5. Joe Burrow set a record he doesn't want to set with 4 interceptions in a game, and he lost a fumble. But I'll tell you what, I'll jump in a huddle and play football with that guy any day. That guy to me is guts personified. You think about not very long ago, an appendectomy where his appendix burst and they were worried about him being septic, and he lost 15 pounds and he couldn't even really walk or run for a while. He's going to practice in a golf cart, trying to keep up with things, and then he starts working his way back and tries to get his body back. Played much better in the second half than he did in the first half. And I'll get in a huddle and play with Joe Burrow any day of the week, any time, any place, against anybody, because this guy is a baller. With that said, you look at -5 in the turnover ratio, and it trumped. They had 32 first downs. The Bengals did to the Steelers 13. They had 432 yards offense to the Steelers 267. I mean, on third down, the Bengals dominated on third down. They converted 50%, 8 of 16. The Steelers 26.7, 4 of 15. They ran 94 snaps to the Steelers 61, 155 snaps in that football game because it went to full overtime. They outrushed the Steelers by almost 2-1, 133 to 75. Every stat. Time of possession, 43 minutes and 43 seconds to 26 minutes and 17 seconds. I mean, the Bengals dominated every stat except 2. Turnovers, -5, and the final score. When you go -5 at any level of football, it's going to be tough to win. The fact that the Bengals were in position to win at the end of regulation and in overtime, says a lot about the football team. But again, you can't put yourself on your schedule, and that's what they did. They self-destructed with those turnovers, and got to get it cleaned up quickly because the Dallas Cowboys led the league in interceptions defensively, led the league in takeaways, and they went +14 as a football team, tied for first in the National Football League last year. So that's the biggest reason they went 12-5, is because they won the turnover battles on a frequent basis. So you got to get it corrected. You got to get it corrected quickly, because in any level of football, you lose the turnover ratio, you're going to have difficulty. In the NFL, you go -5. It's got to be 99.999% of the time you're going to lose the football game. And the Bengals almost won it, and they could have and should have won it. And then the final scenario, Clark Harris tears a bicep and got a bicep injury, and he can't snap. And they have to go to Mitchell Wilcox, and he has some difficulty with high snaps and wobbly snaps, and it disrupts the entire operation. You don't know how important, or you take for granted how important a deep snapper is until you don't have them. But there's 3 components to the operation in the kicking game in terms of extra points and field goals: snap, hold, kick. And Evan McPherson realizes that. And, the last field goal on the high snap, Kevin Huber did a great job to snap over his head to get it down, but he didn't have time to spin the laces away. And Evan McPherson hit the ball right on the laces, and it was a field goal of less than 30 yards. But, I mean, when you hit the ball on the laces instead of on the smooth, rawhide pigskin, I should say, of a football, it's going to be a big difference. You're not exactly sure where it's going to go. And that's what took place on that particular kick. So it was one of those games where up and down and roller coaster. It was like the Beast at Kings Island. But unfortunately, the Bengals lose the game in overtime, 23-20.
Dave, I've got to ask this question to you. The Bengals chose to go on third down and kick. snaps high. Wouldn't it have been better off Kevin Huber just to hold on to that ball and have a second try on that kick instead of kicking it?
Well, I think that you do it on to snap the ball on third down to if you roll a snap or a snap is bobbled or whatever. But I think he was probably told if you handle it, get it down, and it didn't work out obviously, but because he couldn't get the laces spun away. But I think that was the situation there. You know, you do it on third down because I think Darren Simmons at that point is, oh man, you know, this isn't a long field goal, so we can afford to, you know, give up 7 yards potentially if the snap rolls back there or it's mishandled, bobbled, you can't get it down. But if you feel you can catch it and get it down, you know, go ahead and complete the operation, and that's what they did. Having been in a situation where Blair Bush one year blew his knee out, and I was the backup center, even though I had never taken a snap at center in high school, college, or the NFL. I had to go and play center, but I never deep snapped either. So I was trying to do that, and man, that was an experience, having never even done it, never even been trained to do it. But I can tell you that the one thing you don't want to do is miss high as a snapper, because if the holder has to reach above his head and get the ball down, pull it all the way down, it's valuable tenths of a second. That's why the ball was blocked. That kick was blocked. If it has enough velocity on it, and it's, you know, it doesn't have to be, if it's a little low, but it's not rolling back there, and you can handle it and put it on the ground, that's a better situation than having to reach high, pull the thing down, and disrupt the timing of the operation. So, unfortunately, that's what was happening. Wilcox was consistently high with the snaps instead of being on the low side, which would have been a better way to go if you were going to miss. But, you know, and my thing was, I asked Harris about it after the game. I said, "Have you ever snapped before?" He said he hadn't done much of that. And, I can understand. Playing center at the line of scrimmage and being a deep snapper are two different skill sets. It used to be that your center, like Bob Johnson, Blair Bush, they were deep snappers as well. But now in this era of football, they're specialists. And you have centers at the line of scrimmage, and then you have centers that are deep snappers. And they have a roster spot for those guys. Unfortunately for the Bengals, they have Adamitis is on the practice squad, so they can just move him up if the injury to Clark Harris is as significant as it looks like it might be. And then, they can take care of that snapping situation.
When you sit there and look at it, you still have to be impressed with what's going on defense. Lou Anarumo has got this defense playing, great football. No turnovers, but they're bringing, early on didn't really have the pressure, but then you saw it. It seemed as the game went on, you saw both Hubbard and Hendrickson kind of notch it up a little bit, and the front stopped Harris from running the football, and the Steelers end up losing him, maybe to an injury that he already had suffered earlier in the preseason. The defense is looking strong, and you have to feel that this offense is going to get it put together quicker than later.
Well, I mean, I've got stats like I tracked it after 3 quarters. Haven't done it after the game yet, but after 3 quarters, Najee Harris had 12 yards on 7 carries, and he had 3 yards on 2 catches. So he had 9 touches of the football for 15 yards. That's getting it done. It's really, really pretty remarkable. The Pittsburgh Steeler offensive possessions. Now they score on a defensive, touchdown, obviously an unscripted, unconventional score. But their offensive possessions in the first half, there were 7 of them. They gained 9 yards punted, 5 yards punted, 32 yards kicked a field goal, 40 yards for a touchdown. They had a short field as a turnover, 7 yards punt, 7 yards punt, 13 yards punt. So, I mean, that's pretty strong defense for 3 quarters of the football game, and it continued that way. Now, honestly, I do think Mike Tomlin said, particularly after they scored an unconventional score defensively to start the football game, Mike Tomlin has a lot of confidence in that defense, and he should. It's a damn good defensive football team. I think T.J. Watt's in trouble, though. I think T.J. Watt's got a significant injury. He left the game as well. So there were some guys get beaten up and battered in this football game. But that's a damn good front seven, a damn good defensive football team. So at that point in time, he looked at his offensive coordinator and his quarterback and said, I'm not saying play not to lose, but don't make any mistakes. Don't put the ball in jeopardy. And they didn't. And, their situation after 3 quarters was kind of a remarkable story in that they had in the first half, they rushed the ball for 31 yards, threw it for 77, 109 yards offense in the first half. 63 of those 77 passing yards occurred on 2 plays. So snap after snap on a consistent basis, the defense was getting it done. And like I said, I don't think that Pittsburgh was necessarily taking any chances. I did think they used Trubisky pretty well. They had a lot of motion and movement in their offense by formation, and they ran some reverses, end arounds with wide receivers. They had tight end screens. One of those big plays in the first half was a tight end screen that was well called, well conceived. And I thought that they had a little flea flicker. That was the other big play in the first half, that they went for the throat right after a turnover and put themselves in excellent field position with a great call. After the turnover, thinking, the defense is probably thinking, I might get my dauber down a little bit. Let's go for the kill. And they made a big play on a little flea flicker play. So other than that, though, snap after snap, the Bengals defense controlled things, and the Bengals will face offenses that are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more skilled than what the Pittsburgh Steelers tried to do today. But the defense stepped up. The defense played well enough to win the football game. And offensively, 5 turnovers, that's going to put you in jeopardy. And then when you lose your long snapper and you can't convert on kicks on special teams, that's not quite enough to get it done. So the self-destruction offensively and the key injury to the deep snapper on special teams spelled doom and gloom.
You're getting the post-game thoughts of Dave Lapham in the trenches, brought to you by First Star Logistics. Looking for a new career? Be sure to check out firststarlogistics.com. A great and exciting place to work, pays the highest commissions in the industry. Dave, I have to ask, I know fans on Twitter are all asking about the catch by Jamar Chase down by the end zone that was ruled out at basically the 1 yard line. It looked on replay that should have been called a touchdown. In fact, the CBS coverage, their expert rules interpreter, said if it would have been challenged, it would have been called a touchdown. Thoughts on that play?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I thought, how about if you just maybe extended the ball, past the pylon? But just an unbelievable effort for him to drag that, get one foot down and drag the other. And that's very unfortunate. But you have 1st and goal at the 6 yard line, and you can't score. Honestly, that might have been a situation where if they did allow them to score, it might have been tough because they didn't take enough time off the clock, But you ultimately want to score no matter what, because look what happens. You have a 1st and goal at the 6 yard line, you get stoned on 1st down, you get knocked backwards, and then you can't score. You can't score a touchdown. So, yeah, it ended up being tough. But I thought, you know what? 1st and goal at the 6-inch line, that should work out well. You're going to be able to melt more clock, but boom, didn't get it done. And so some things that were problematic last year, quarterback sacks, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, short yardage, low red zone running game, things of that nature, kind of reared their ugly head again. So got a lot of things to work on, a lot of positives in the football game because of the fact that never say die, never quit. When you were turning that football over, the defense could have just said, geez, it's not our day, and they could have collapsed, but they fought, possession after possession, kept the Bengals in the football game. Bengals never had a lead in the football game. And unfortunately, I thought they were going to get it done with scoring at the gun like that, and you can't kick the extra point, and it goes into overtime. And now I'm thinking, oh boy, now what are you going to do if you're the offense coordinator and the head coach? You're gonna say on 3rd or 4th, are we going to go for it on 4th down? Or are we going to kick? Well, we're having problems with deep snapper. It just changes the whole dynamic of your play calling. It makes things so different. So there were a lot of problems this football team faced. Some of them self-induced, a lot of them self-induced, but they kept fighting. They never spit the bit, never quit on it. If they get these things squared away, they can steamroll some people. We'll see.
Fans came into this season excited about the revamped offensive line. Rookie Cordell Volson, we knew was going to have a tough challenge in his first NFL start. Cam Hayward, one of the best in the business. One of the things I noticed, it just seemed like he allowed Hayward to get that inside, wasn't getting any extension on Hayward in the trenches there. And then the other part was Collins at the right tackle spot. It just seemed like he could not get Watt's hands down at all.
Yeah, T.J. Watt is a special player. I mean, for him to make an interception on that throw that Joe Burrow made, when he jumped to, deflect it. Well, not only deflect it, he catches the thing. It's almost like Bruce Lee. How the hell do you do that? How do you catch that ball that's got some RPMs on it coming out of Joe Burrow's hand right on top of him like that and just snag the thing? I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. This guy's a freak of nature. And Cam Hayward has made the Pro Bowl 5 years in a row for a reason. He's a great, great football player. There are no two ways about it. T.J. Watt is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. There's no two ways about that either. The guy is a playmaker extraordinaire. But it's amazing. You're going to go from the frying pan to the fire because the Dallas Cowboys, they've got themselves a defensive playmaker as well that can do a lot of things. You end up every single week you've got players with coaches that scheme these players to a level that you just can't believe, and on a week-to-week basis, it's always a challenge. So, you have Myles Garrett in your division. Dallas Cowboys have a linebacker that Micah Parsons is unbelievable. 13 quarterback sacks, I think 30 some odd pressures as well, 20 some odd tackles for loss. He was runner-up Defensive Player of the Year. So you go T.J. Watt, who's, a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, Micah Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys, who people are saying, I should just make him an edge rusher. This guy's an unbelievable pass rusher, 13 sacks. He can do so many other things. He's like a Swiss Army knife. And they utilize him so many ways down there in Dallas. So now you're going to have to game plan, against that. And like I said, they led the NFL in takeaways last year, and he's a big reason why. So defensive players in this league, telling you, they're unbelievably talented, and these coaches scheme around the talents and scheme to utilize and showcase the talents of these players, and they do an outstanding job of it. There's no doubt.
Dave, one player that really I felt we saw kind of coming out, especially new to the Bengals, Hayden Hurst, the tight end. We saw some of the things that he can do. He can do multiple things for you on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he can. And, Pittsburgh was running a lot of cover two, and they were utilizing Hayden Hurst on the outside. Quick passes to the outside. They were getting the ball down the middle of the football field to their running backs. Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine both caught the ball in the middle of the football field and split the linebackers and picked up some big yards against that cover two. So, they were patient with it, and then were able to get Jamar Chase involved, as well. And Jamar Chase had a game that obviously any receiver in the National Football League would be proud of. I mean, guy puts up numbers on a consistent basis, and the thing about him, I mean, he is so his base is so powerful. His foundation, his contact balance. He catches the football and the fun starts. 10 catches today, 129 yards, and he had a touchdown. His longest was a 24-yard reception. He almost broke a couple, though, to the house. He was targeted 16 times, had 10 catches out of it. So he's a special talent. But you're right. Hayden Hurst was targeted 8 times, 5 catches for 46 yards. His longest was a 20-yard reception. Tyler Boyd stepped up when he had to down the stretch of the game, had a big touchdown catch. That was significant. I will say, though, the fact that Minkah Fitzpatrick was not even penalized on the hit on T. Higgins that knocked T. Higgins out of the game with a concussion, I mean, that was a huge play in the football game. Not only did they not penalize Minkah Fitzpatrick 15 yards for the hit, T. Higgins is in the concussion protocol tent, and he goes taken into the locker room. He's done for the day. So how big would it have been to have T. Higgins in the second half all the times they were in the red zone. He's a humongous red zone weapon. Kid is massive, tall, 6'4 plus, broad shoulders, big target. Not to have him in the football game was a tough blow. There's no question about it. It was a very physical game, like we thought it'd be. Both teams suffered some physical maladies, that they're going to have to deal with come tomorrow. And some of them may be significant. We'll see what the final toll is on both football teams.
Yeah, it never surprises me. There's a play like that in every Steelers-Bengals matchup, it seems, where just that the physicality that these two teams bring against each other, you know you're going to see some sort of play that leaves you questioning why wasn't something called, or we don't want to say dirty play, but I mean there's been the history there between the two teams over the many years. So Dave, I'm going to let you get final thoughts here in the trenches post-game of the Steelers. They do defeat the Bengals in Week 1, and as you said, the Cowboys next Sunday, a mid-afternoon game, get 4:25 Eastern kickoff on CBS and on the First Star Logistics Bengals radio network. And final thoughts, how do you transition from kind of the emotional roller coaster of this Sunday to get ready for the Dallas Cowboys?
It's very simple in my mind. I mean, you basically realize that not only did the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Bengals beat the Bengals. They self-destructed. They put themselves on their schedule. You have 5 turnovers. 5, and the first half obviously was much more brutal than the second half. They did play better in the second half in an overtime, and started to get a little bit of rhythm and timing and some of those things. But bottom line is, you give the football up that many times. You say, I don't want to even finish these possessions. You can have them. I'll give you 5 more possessions. The thing that's mind-boggling to me, even with the 5 turnovers, the Bengals to have run almost 100 snaps to the Pittsburgh Steelers, running nowhere close to that kind of number. And the Bengals ran 94 snaps and the Steelers ran 61. That's with 5 turnovers. I mean, if the Bengals hadn't turned the football over, it wouldn't have gone into overtime, and the snaps wouldn't be that high, that crazy. But I mean, it's just unbelievable that I think the better team basically said, here you go, we're going to give you extra chances. And when you do that, you're not the better team anymore. And it was proven once again. So, like I said, turnovers trumped all kinds of better stats for the Cincinnati Bengals. Third down, you name a stat, yards, rushing yards, passing yards. You name any statistic, the Bengals won it, except the most significant one, and that is turnovers. Because not only are you giving extra possessions, you're giving up field position. You're giving short fields. I mean, Steelers didn't even they had 138 yards at halftime, but they have a defensive score, and that's the biggest crusher. I mean, it's not only you turn the football over, they don't even run an offensive snap to put points on the board. Those unconventional, unscripted scores are massive in a division rivalry like this. So right away, the Pittsburgh Steelers, jumped out in front 7-0. The Bengals could never get a lead. They tied them. They could never get a lead. So lesson learned, can't beat yourself. You got to take yourself off your schedule. If they go down to Dallas and play sound football, take care of the football, I think they'll be in pretty good shape, and that's all correctable.
Week 1 of 18 down. Bengals 0-1 on the season. You've been listening to Dave Lapham in the Trenches, brought to you by First Star Logistics. Be sure, if you've not done so, hit like and also hit the subscribe button to In the Trenches with Dave Lapham and help us grow the channel. Dave, as always, appreciate you taking the time, especially on a busy game day. And we didn't even talk about you being ruler of the jungle today. That experience, I know, is something that you didn't know how it would work out, but maybe close with maybe a little thought on that.
Yeah, that was a heck of an honor, quite honestly. It was the biggest crowd in franchise history. People were definitely excited, up in the bit, and just to be part of the free game did a little thing where when the Bengals introduced the offensive players to bring the players out, we taped a little something to be part of that, and then lead the Who Dey chant right before kickoff. It was a lot of fun. The energy was palpable, man. I mean, you could cut it with a knife. There's no doubt about that, and the fans were fired up. It was a lot of fun. Took a lot of selfies, Dave. I mean, it was crazy out there, and I missed the pick six. I was working my way back up to the booth, and the Bengals were down 7-0. I'm saying, what the heck? It filled me in on the Minkah Fitzpatrick pick six, and that kid had a heck of a football game. There's no question about it. But yeah, ruler of the jungle. I wish it had a different outcome in terms of the Bengals, winning the football game, not losing the game in overtime. But it was a real thrill to be part of a scenario like that, and to see the scene of all these Bengal fans going absolutely nuts. It was great. It was a tremendous experience and a tremendous honor, and I'm eternally grateful to the Bengals organization for giving me the chance, for sure.
Dave, again, appreciate the time. Until next time, make sure you get all the latest on In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. Thank you, everybody.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.